Welcome to the Sound on Sound People and Music Industry podcast channel with me, Kevin Paul. In today's episode, I speak to Bernard Butler about his production and songwriting career and how he gets bands and artists to perform and to be challenged within the studio and songwriting environment. I think it's a very interesting interview with loads of great information, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Bernard, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's just go straight into it. I don't necessarily want to go over all of your very extensive history as a recording artist, but I thought that we'd maybe start with your most recent band, Butler, Blake and Grant. How did that all start?
Well, it started because I was asked to do Celtic Connections and a show in a place called Straven, just south of Glasgow. Somebody had a good idea. Somebody who knew Norman and James just said, "You two fancy doing a show together, like a songwriting circle thing?" And they said, "Yeah." And then somebody put up my name as well. And I knew Norman Blake from Teenage Fan Club. I've known Norman since about 92 or something. So a long, long time. I'm always a big Teenage Fan Club fan and played with them and stuff. And I didn't know James at all, but it just sounded like fun. I just thought, yeah, I like things where they're a shot in the dark, where, you know, a jump into something and you don't know what's going to happen. So I'm always quite attracted to that musical situation. So we did this one show. We just met one night, did a rehearsal for about 2 hours, and then did the show the next day, and it was just quite good fun. And everyone seemed to like it, you know. And so now we've made a record this year, and I've just finished another one that's going to come out next year.
You're touring that record, aren't you?
Yeah, I've just come back from Ireland yesterday. I was in Ireland for a week, going to Spain next week for a week. So, and yeah, we'll be on tour again next year when the record comes out. So yeah, we've done a lot of shows, yeah.
What's it like going back on the road again? Is that a place that you're comfortable with?
I do a lot of touring because, as you mentioned, you know, my sort of discography, if you like, is pretty varied. It always depends who I'm talking to, which bit you keep up with, and I don't expect anybody to keep up with any of it really. But I've actually been touring for about over 10 years, on and off or more. I mean, I did for about 5 years. I was with Ben Watt, being his sort of sidekick guitarist, and we went around America twice, Japan 3 times. You know, we toured for years. After that, the last few years, I've actually been touring as a solo artist, and got really extensively, as well as Butler, Blake, Grant. So yeah, I think depending on which person you know, you think I'm a reclusive guitar player or a reclusive producer or whatever, you know, I don't really care. Yeah, but I love touring. I mean, I love playing live. And when you say touring, what I really like at the age I'm at, particularly the part of my life I'm at, is I like traveling. I like meeting people. Right. Everything I do when I tour now is on my own. I'm arranging the shows with agents. I do the artwork. I book the hotel. I book the trains. I book the planes.
You don't have a tour manager then?
Nothing. Musicians these days, you can't afford to do anything. So I do all of that. And in the UK and Ireland and Scotland, I drive myself to the show. You set it up. You pack down afterwards. You do the merch. You drive yourself back to the hotel. You go on the next day, and you do everything exclusively. I do everything on my own, through to packing the merch up. It's wonderful, but it's incredibly hard work. But it's rewarding, and you get to that way. I get to choose exactly how I travel, where I travel to, and so I go to nice places. Like I'm going to Spain next week, and it's just I'm going around Spain. I'm going to Madrid, Barcelona, Girona, Granada. All on the train. And I really enjoy that process of just seeing the world in that way. It's kind of a privilege that you get as a musician to have that opportunity to travel in that way. You know,
there's so many things we could talk about, but the main thing really I would like to focus on is the production.
Yeah, sure.
How did you start getting into production, and what brought you into the studio as a producer for other artists?
The first thing I was asked to do for other artists was actually for Tony Wilson, legendary Tony Wilson from Factory Records. Yeah. He asked me, he had a group called Hopper, and they were signed to what he called Factory 2, which is after Factory broke down, he set up a new label, and it's with him. And I just, if Tony Wilson had asked me to produce a cup of tea, I would have said yes.
Yeah.
It was Tony Wilson, and but I liked.
He was such a character.
Yeah, obviously, and I grew up with all that music. I grew up with the music of Factory Records, and New Order is such a big influence on me, and all of that influence of Manchester. Talk as a Londoner who'd never been to Manchester, of course. There's an indie group, sort of Britpop sort of style indie group, and they had a really interesting singer, and they were just nice people, and we had a lot of fun. And I did that, and went into RAC. My engineer, the guy at the time who's engineering at RAC and who I always used was my mate, was called Nigel, and that was Nigel Godrich. And Nigel was the house engineer at RAC Studios in London. And so everything I did with me or other stuff I was doing, or when this came along, I just said to Nigel, "Can you do this?" And he said, "Yeah." And so we worked together, and we just went up and down. I used to pick him up in the morning and drive him down, and we used to drive home afterwards, and that was the way it was. Yeah. So it's good. It was a good time, good fun, and we got to sit in the studio and spend lots of money, sitting in RAC for a month or something, and recording and learning.
Well, we don't have those budgets anymore, do we?
No, not at all. No, I haven't been in a recording studio for years.
Oh, really? You do most of it at home?
I do everything at home. I mean, I do everything at home or wherever I can. But I mean, I haven't had a budget to go into a recording studio for, I don't know when the last time was. Okay, there was occasionally here and there I get the odd couple of days here and there or something, but it's just almost impossible.
When you're working with an artist or a band, what do you like to do in terms of recording? Are you very much like, okay, let's get everyone in a live room and play together, or do you like to get like individual people playing separately? What's your approach to a particular project, or does it vary from artist to artist?
Yeah, you find out who they are and what they do, and what they're best at, and what will create the best environment for a start. That's the most important thing, where people will be comfortable, and also where people will be uncomfortable. When they're too comfortable in a certain setup, you have to break things down a little bit as well. So it really depends on what it is, So, for example, I worked with an Irish band last year called the Clockworks, and they're a 4-piece rock and roll band, guitars and drums, and they're really superb, great songs and great people. They were very comfortable playing exactly as they were, but they'd grown up playing together, playing everything as they did, all very democratically. So the most important thing I could do for them was to throw a grenade in the room, because everything was so comfortable and it sounded like lots of rock and roll bands. So I'd say, now you sound like a band, you sound like lots of other people. So why do you want to sound like everyone else?
And what was their reaction?
Well, shock. It's normally shock, but that's, which is good, because when people are just really comfortable and cozy, just playing along and saying, yeah, we want to be a band and we want to just sound like all the other bands. My first question is always, why do you want to sound like everyone else? What's the point? So you have to, but we're all individuals. We all have our own DNA. If you're just trying to sound like everybody else, then you have to find out where the character is and where your limitations are. And a lot of that is about pushing people mentally to try and find out what they've got. You can always say, "You've played your song for me. There's your song. I can hear it. It's recorded. Why aren't I screaming for joy?" You have to see, what else have you got? You've just done things successfully. What happens if you go further? So that's normally part of the game, really. And a lot of that can be about people playing in a room and then people not playing in a room, people breaking things down and saying, okay, well, we've done that. How about we just mute those drums, or mute this, or take this out, or see, actually, your guitar part that you worked on so well, how about we get rid of that? And just to see what will happen.
Are you looking for a reaction there?
No reaction. I'm looking for a musical reaction. I'm looking for a creative reaction where somebody is put into a decision where they have to say, okay, well, that's the part that I've always wanted to have on it. But I'll always say, well, is it better? Does it work better? Is it more interesting without it? Or would it be more interesting if you did that in a different way? So it's all about asking questions and challenges all the time.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because people become attached to things, don't they? They become, the guitar player, loves his part. He's spent hours recording it, and you go, yeah, I'm really sorry, but it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And then there's a battle of will, isn't there, between what actually happens and how it moves forward. How do you deal with that when artists are not necessarily insistent, but kind of attached to things that unfortunately may or may not work for the song?
Well, quite often things do work for a song, but they just sound fairly standard. And where you don't feel like the musician has pushed themselves as far as they can, because particularly with groups, they stand in a room together and they play the same song and they play it live and they just think, this is all great, it all works, let's just leave it like that. And then they forget about it for 6 months or a year or however long years, before they record it.
Yeah.
And all their dream is to record that thing as they hear it live or hear it when they're playing, without thinking about what could they create, what could it be. What could they be at their best? And a lot of the time that does work. A lot of the time, just pressing record and recording something brilliantly live is exactly the right thing to do. And but I think to get the best in every area, every element of what you do, then what you have to start asking questions. A lot of the time, my job is to say I don't like it, because as a producer, they think you've been hired to say you love them and everything they do is great. And so sometimes you just say, I don't think this song's very good. And I'd always say to them, turn on the radio now, any station, and tell me you like every song you hear.
Yeah.
And, we don't do it. We all turn on radio or whatever. You turn on a Spotify playlist you don't know or something like that. And we just flick and flick, till we fall in love with something. And we got to be honest about that's on most people's emotional reactions to everything: clothes, haircuts, music, art, TV, everything. You something clicks with you at a certain moment, has an emotional reaction, and so I'm always just trying to find that. And when I get bored in the studio, I just tell them, I say, "Oh, look, I'm a bit bored by this. What can we do?" And often it's, well, I haven't got a solution, but I feel that by throwing a problem into the room means that people have to work hard to create something. And then it's not my job to say, you know what, this doesn't work. And what will work exactly is if you perform this, a semitone up on a harpsichord through a chorus pedal. That's not my job to say to give you the exact solution. My job is to say something else could happen. What can you do? And then ask.
Yes, and encourage them.
Exactly. So then we all create something together that we didn't have, and then you can say, right, well, I didn't know that was going to happen, but if I hadn't asked the question, you wouldn't get in the situation where you create something. So a lot of the time, that's my job.
I mean, I should imagine if it's a new artist with your pedigree and CV, it's probably quite easy to convince people to go with the way that you're going. How do you get people to listen to your way of thinking?
I don't really find it easy. I mean, but honestly, it's not easy, and I always try and make it that this is a standard situation. It is, but I always have to take a deep breath secretly, and just pray that something works out. But I always just try and be honest about what I'm hearing and whether I like something or not. And I always say, that's fine. If you don't agree with me, then that's fine. You asked me to be here. You asked me to. I'm not a recording engineer. I'm not interested in that really. I do it because I learn how to do it and by default. But I'm not here to be a recording engineer, and I'm not here to go through your favorite plugins and get out your fancy mics. I just don't really care about all that, because you go past the point where you're impressed by all those processes. Those things. My job is that you've asked me to be here, so I have to show what I am for you. Otherwise, you can just. Otherwise, it's absolutely fine because you can get somebody else to record you while doing the thing that you want to do, and I will be really happy.
The statement that you said, "You asked me to be here," is quite a defining one, and it's quite important, isn't it, in terms of the role of a producer within the studio?
Yeah, I mean, as a guitar player, I always say the same thing. I always say, "What is the point of me being here?" You know, you can get lots of people to strum chords or to play blues solos or whatever you want to do, or if you've got music that's already recorded, just to copy the part that's there. That's fine. You can get lots of people to do that, and please be my guest to get that person to just do that. You know, but again, it's like what's the point of me being here? You know, what can I add? What can I do that changes things or or makes things, I guess, makes it worthwhile me being here. I think a lot of that is in the age we are in. Every particularly young, well, any musician, most musicians under our age probably, they grow up with a MacBook with Logic built in, and there's their studio, and they're already very fluent with well, I wouldn't say recording techniques, but how to edit and make fantastic sounds and do stuff. It's not very impressive to just do all this. And often you hear stuff and you think, wow, it sounds really brilliant. Why are you playing this to me? Off you go. But again, I come back to the same questions, like, what do you want from me? Your music sounds great.
Yeah, what's the value?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not just going to put it onto my Pro Tools system and put it through my converters and hope it just sounds a bit better or something. I just don't care about that. What's the point? So I guess from where my generation started, it was different because you'd just never seen a recording studio until you'd stood inside it and you were ready to go. You'd never recorded anything apart from on a 4-track, if you're lucky,
Do you have a regular recording engineer? You spoke about being an engineer, but do you have one, or do you just use anyone, or do you just do it all on your own?
I do everything at home on my own.
Yeah, sure.
If I do anything involving Pro Tools or anything anywhere else, it's all on my own. If I go to a studio, if I occasionally use another studio, I'll just use the engineer that's in the studio. My policy will always be, this is your studio, you know how to use it.
What do you expect from a recording engineer in the studio? Are they literally a technician, or is there creative inputs that you want from them? Because some people don't want that. They just want, okay, put mics up, get a sound, press record, that's it. I'll tell you when I need something else from you.
I want somebody who knows the best places in their studio. Yeah. I don't really want them to set up a big outboard vocal chain or anything like that, because I'll just say, I don't care. If you set up... If you've got 2 or 3, you've got, I'm going to go from this mic pre, which is really fantastic, into this compressor, and then I'm going to go out of it into this whatever and stuff. I'll just be like, right, that's really impressive, but are we finished yet? And the same with drums. Drums is always the thing. I would give an engineer 1 hour maximum. Even that's too much. I want 2 or 3 microphones in front of a drum kit, and I want a drummer playing all the way through. I will never go through that situation again that I did when I was younger, where you were told to come into the studio at 4 o'clock because that time was spent setting up the drums. Yeah. I mean, that is just mind.
And getting 16 microphones up.
It's like, this is you're coming to the studio to make your first record. This is the greatest moment of your life. You've never been so excited.
Absolutely.
The session begins at 10 a.m. Can you please arrive at 4 p.m.? Yeah. Or even worse, you just sat there and you're like, I was here at 10 a.m. ready to play. And what is going on? What is this horrible noise? And then at 4 p.m. you're asked, okay, don't worry about your amplifier or whatever. Can you just plug into this socket here, and we'll just plug you in, and that's all you need to do. And it was the most depressing day of my life. So I'll never want to go through that again. Whenever we record drums, I expect to just walk in, put them there, and play, and that's it. And you put mics around as you can and get on with it really quickly. So that's any engineer I work with, I just say, I guess that's what I ask them.
Just get on with it, basically.
Don't try and press me with gear, because I don't care at all.
I love that.
Yeah. Great engineers know great rooms, and they know well. I often put 57 over there in the corner or something, and I just leave it there. It sounds really good. And I'll say, great, record it for me. That's brilliant. I trust you. You think that's where you get a room sound or something that's nice. Great. And I'll say, have you got a guitar amplifier? And they said, oh, I always use this. It's great. And I say, great, give it to me and I'll play through it. I don't care what it is. So stuff like that, having that sense of opinion. And also not messing around with singers. Not messing them around with headphones and spending hours setting up vocal booths and all that kind of stuff, and getting them to sing takes in order to just do run throughs to get your de-esser right or something like that. No, all of that. If a singer's going to sing, I expect you to her or he or whoever to walk over to a microphone and record it, and that's all.
Mm. Yeah, because it's about capturing the performance, isn't it? It's not as we discussed before we started, it's not, the gear doesn't really make great records. What makes great records is performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Performance and ideas, and all the rest. Yeah. All the rest you find. You can have fantastic rooms, and I've stood in fantastic rooms that you record and it's great. Obviously, if you're recording an orchestra, you're not going to do that in your bathroom, or in your bedroom, or something and expect it. But with an awful lot of recording individual instruments or at a time, you just it's not about that, and you find great spaces at home in your hallway or whatever. If you want to find those spaces, It doesn't matter if it's in the hallway of Rack or in the hallway outside your lounge. It's no one cares. Like, no one ever writes down on the back of a record where that amazing room sound was, because no one cares. Your mum will never care. She just wants to know, did I turn it up or did I turn it off?
Do I like it? Do I not like it?
That's it.
That's all they're interested in. Yeah. Can we talk about songwriting just for a little bit?
Yeah.
How do you? Songwriting. Look, I'm a frustrated musician. It's the reason why I'm an engineer and a producer. If I hit something, I can get a noise out of it, but I can't put things together. How do you start your songwriting? Is it chord, melody, lyrics? Where's your kind of like? I'm sure after the career that you've had, you're well versed at that. But when you sort of went back to the beginning, how are you kind of starting your approach to songwriting?
Again, it is boringly depends who it is and who you're with, and everyone's different case really. So if I was doing a co-write with somebody, for example, like the most recent thing is singer Duffy, who I've done a lot of work with, and we've been writing a lot recently, and. How does it start with her? For a start, we're just talking. We're always just talking, and she'll just be talking about. Generally, Duffy will have an idea. She'll have a line, like she loves this line. I want to write a song about this line, and it'll be something to do with her. And I won't get involved in about what that is with her life, in what reference that is to her. Private life or whatever, her thoughts or whatever it is. And so I'll just think about, lines that she has that I find attractive and I think are musical. So if I can hear them instantly with some kind of rhythm or melody, I can hear her singing them, and it's not terribly cheesy or something like that. So, and I'll hook it around that. Me and her would always go to a piano, always the piano, and go around the piano together, and I'll just bang on stuff. She'd often say, I want something upbeat or always upbeat. Duffy always wants something upbeat. Dude, let's do an upbeat. And we always end up not doing upbeat. But we start with something, a groove or whatever. Just try and find grooves and little hooks with little notes from the piano and get her singing. I get her singing in front of me as quick as I can. Standing next to me, and the more she sings, I vibe off that, and I go to places, and I think, okay, we're there, I'll tell her what I like. Say, I like that little phrase there. That was really nice. We'll record everything on our phones, and then you'll move on and say, okay, this is where it can go, and quite quickly you pull together, a groove, and then you start bashing it and saying, okay, is this any good? Is this worth pursuing, or do we start again? That's one example, with her. With other people, it would be completely different. If it was, for example, Jessie Buckley, when I made that record a few years ago with Jessie, me and Jesse would sit in my kitchen every day for hours and hours, and all we do is we'd sit there and drink tea for a start and talk, and we talk a lot, and we talk about a lot about what's going on in the world. Jessie wasn't interested really in just in the same way as Duffy sitting at a piano and just jamming. That's not her thing.
Yeah.
She just talked, and the more we talked, we'd both write things down that we were talking about, and then we'd start going through books. And quite often we went through books just in my bookcase on the shelves, and we had a pattern of we got into a process of grabbing books that one of us hadn't read and opening them at random places. And so Jessie would open something and say, "What's this book?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. My wife got it. I can't remember." And she'd open it at a paragraph and she'd read something out and she'd say, "What does this mean?" You know, and I'd say, "I don't know." And we'd talk about it. And so we'd talk about what it meant, and we'd grab lines from it or phrases, but then we'd write down how we interpreted this completely out of context paragraph from a narrative that we didn't know anything about, you know. And then we'd actually, the musical part of it would be the last thing we did, you know. It'd almost be the last hour, and I'd sort of grab a guitar and start jamming something, and everything I did with Jessie was in a dadgad tuning on the guitar. So because I wanted everything to be in an uncomfortable place with me. I'd never used dadgad before, so I wanted it to be uncomfortable for me because I felt that Jessie was in an uncomfortable place as an actor, writing songs, and I wanted to be in the same zone as her. And so we'd spend the last hour just moulding these things that we'd written down, and these abstract lines, and putting them together. And that's how the song, and we wrote songs like that. And we recorded it once with that record. We'd do this in the last hour. We'd have one run through on our phone, record it on our phone, and that would be it. And she'd go away, and the next week she'd come back and we did it again. And we did that for kind of, I don't know, a few months, like every week, once a week. And then the record became basically that. I mean, I put all these phone recordings into Pro Tools, and I built pieces of music around the phone recordings. Even I did tempo maps as well around, because obviously they were just jams in the kitchen. So I'd build a tempo map and add percussion along to that with the exact tempo that was going up and down all over the place, and very back to front way of making a record. But that said, that began with the songwriting. So it went from quite an unusual process of songwriting, which I really like, and then through to the recording on that day. And the recording that day was basically the blueprint for the ultimate recording and the production.
Tell me about BB and the King, your radio show. With so much music that's being released literally every single day, how did you find music for that?
It was good because it forced me every week to just find loads and loads of new music. And with my friend Mark Kingston, I did it with. He's just a good friend of mine who's an encyclopedia of great culture. We'd sort of pick a theme. Like Mark would come up with a literary quote or theme or something, and that became our theme that we wheedled music around, and we wheedled new music into it. That's all, and it gave me a good opportunity to just spend a few hours every week just searching for music within a theme, music that wasn't mine, that fitted a theme which we'd invented. So it was quite cool, quite a creative way of doing things.
Yeah, it's good fun doing things like that with radio.
Yeah.
But again, like for me, there's so much music coming out, it's impossible to know everything, and you're going to miss so much. But it's always nice to get the bits that you do get. You think, oh, that's really good, that I'm so glad I've discovered X or seen this or gone down this rabbit hole. You know, I do wonder how people who do DJing for a living, whether it's in a club or on the radio, manage to find their music, because it's got to be an absolute nightmare these days. You know, when I bought records, there were maybe 200, 300 a week coming out.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
You know, now you're talking 20,000 records a week coming out.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, but it's just like everything, you know, there's 100 billion trillion people on the planet, and, you know, I know 3. I'm
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too, actually.
I'm not worried about all the people I never met. I'm just not going to,
Yeah.
I never saw the Beatles. I never will. I'm not worried by it. I wish, Elvis, it would have been nice to have seen Elvis, I guess, but, it's not going to kill me, so it's the same with, you find the things that you like that mean something to you and hang on to them.
What advice do you have for the budding songwriter, producer and artist? What advice could you give them starting out in this industry and making records?
What advice do I give them? Wow. Do things you love. Don't expect it to be a living. Currently, don't expect a career. Don't do it to be a career or successful. I find those young people. I say young. I'm talking about people who aren't that young, relatively,
young
but
adults. Yeah.
But I find it really boring when I meet people that are so career motivated to build a career. I do a lot of work with other organizations that within the music industry, if you like, and a lot of the people I work around trying to help young musicians, the questions are always about that, always about how do I become successful? How do I build my brand? How do I do that? How do I achieve? And I always think about success criteria. That's the phrase that comes in my brain a lot. People's idea of success is always about building a career, having a salary, having money, have success in terms of number of streams, the amount of work you get, all that kind of stuff. And the truth is that, and that's great. And I'm really pleased for those people who want to work and are ambitious to work in that way. But I never have been. And I kind of go off people as soon as they talk in that way. I'm just not interested. I never thought I'd make a career out of making music. I didn't think people, when I grew up, I didn't think the people I liked did. I didn't think they were people making money. Again, we go back to factory records and stuff. I always thought of that as people just like probably had jobs or probably did something, but it's only me that really knew about them and their music meant everything to me and what they did and I thought you'd be privileged if you could do stuff like that, but I never thought it was something you made money out of. I just genuinely didn't, and certainly enough to sort of sustain a career over a few decades. So I never expected it. I still don't expect it. I've never felt entitled in that way, and so my success criteria has always been to do something I love, something that I hope that I've got a passion for and I follow with a passion, and the greatest joy to me is that it brings joy to other people, in the way all those great records have to me, and when you find out that when someone says something to you in that way, then it still blows you away every time. So my advice would be to do something you love, try and create something unique that you love and that might mean something to other people's lives. And if you do that once, I've done it, several times, many times over. Had music that means something to people. But I still believe, like, if I just made one 3-minute song, a great song that people loved, and were playing, 10 years later or something, I think that's such a great thing in life to have achieved that.
Yeah, and it's about being consistent, isn't it? If you want to do that as a pursuit, if you're consistent about it, eventually people will find you, and eventually you'll have all of those things that you maybe were asking about at the beginning. Really it's about just being creative and just sharing yourself with the world,
Yeah, when people ask that question, there's also now a whole network of people who will say, sure, this is exactly how to do it. And I'll tell you the framework and we'll lay out a PowerPoint presentation of how this can work for you in your life in response to the current climate and stuff. And I just find that whole system incredibly boring. I just find it incredibly tedious, and it's just there's nothing creative about it. It's just so matter of fact, and it's
Or
all
formulaic.
it's
isn't it?
formulaic, and formulas are boring. Mavericks, in every area of life are the people that are interesting. As soon as you become like everyone else, it's just what's the point?
Are you allowed to talk about what you're up to now, or what are you up to? Are you recording like some new stuff with people, or on your own? You said you're touring.
I'm in between these two tours. I'm starting to make another solo record for myself, and then there's which I hope to be out, I don't know, the end of next year or maybe the year after. But I'm starting that process now. Working on a bit of McAlmont and Butler, a reissue. So there's always little things going on. I've spent a year trying to get Universal to allow us to put the music that we made that they own, which we don't have any say over, back in the shop, essentially, so people can actually buy it and enjoy it. And it's taken a year to get them to agree to it, which is maddening. But anyway, that's happening now, for next year, so that people will be able to buy that record again, that music again, and talk about it. So there's always things like that take up a lot of time, doing artwork and stuff like that. And there's things like Duffy. I know Duffy's in the process of making new music, and I don't know when that will come. And then the big one is always, I've no idea, because you know it could be next week. There'll be somebody asked me to do something, or I think of something, or I don't know. And that's always the way it's been for me. You just don't know what's going to happen, and that's sort of the thrill of it as well.
And where can people find you if they want to follow what you're doing?
Well, probably in the modern world, it's Instagram is the thing, and Facebook. Bernard Butler Official on Instagram and Facebook are sort of, you can keep up with things, and I try and use that as the sort of the voice of letting you know what I'm up to and what I'm doing. Yeah, that's it.
Bernard, it's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Yeah. Lovely, thanks. I don't often get to talk about production processes, really, because often it's about a particular project, and normally how you actually do things and think about things in a studio context is sort of bypassed a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the reasons for the podcast, actually. It's designed really to get people thinking about what they're doing. And, in a world that has become so sterile in its application to make music, I want to get people thinking about how to do things differently. You can almost tell these days how records are made. If you listen to them, you can go, oh yeah, this is made by these processes. And the thing that I always loved when I started working in the studio is every person had a different way of doing the same things.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned how to do things. And that's kind of been lost a little bit, because the big recording studios aren't there. The career path, if you like, tape op, engineer, producer, that's kind of disappeared a lot, and it's been overtaken by social media or other avenues. And for me, I think it's really important that people like yourselves and other people that come on the podcast are allowed to rejuvenate and hopefully invigorate people into thinking about how to make records in a different way.
Yeah, I think that the key to it is that things are homogenized, and made to feel like here's how to get that great pop vocal sound as heard on Sabrina Carpenter 100%. Or whatever. And you see a lot of that on social media, and it's selling plugins and stuff. But the thing that I always think about is that how few times I've been in a studio watching another producer, and I often think I don't really know how anybody does stuff. I don't really, I don't know how other people work, really. I mean, obviously when I was younger, and occasionally engineers, that's why now I love just an engineer. You're a good engineer and you know your studio, brilliant. I'm going to sit over there and have a cup of tea and tell me when you're ready. Because it's really nice to watch people do their job in that way. But really, I don't know how producers work. And that's quite good, because I think you end up hopefully doing your own thing. And, if someone punches you, someone punches you. That's fine. If you get to that, that's it. But at least you've been yourself, and you've, as I said, you've brought yourself to the picture rather than, a Facebook post.
Bernard, it's been fantastic talking with you. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening, and be sure to check out the show notes page for this episode, where you'll find further information along with web links and details of all our other episodes. And just before you go, let me point you to the Sound on Sound /podcasts website page, where you can explore what's playing on our other channels. This has been a Mixbus production by me, Kevin Paul, for Sound on Sound.